So I wanted to pose the question, how much of a multimedia bookworm are you? And I don't mean, do you listen to audiobooks, read ebooks, or read paper books? Although if you want to discuss that, you can put that down below and I'll be glad to talk to you about that. What I mean is, how much of your book reading crosses over into other media? And I'll explain below the very emotional reason this question came up for me. But I think that we all do this at some level. For example, we all have books that we love that get turned into movies and we'll watch the adaptation. So, that's multimedia. We read the book and we watch the movie. But how deep does that go? Is there more to it for you? For example, you do your graphic novels, and if your graphic novel you love is turned into a movie, do you watch that after reading the novel, or vice versa? What about with guilty pleasure movies? Were they books where you go back and read the material for guilty pleasure movies? Is that a bit too far? And of course, TV shows. Obviously, we read, the other way too. So, are you a person who will watch Star Trek and read a Star Trek novel, or watch Star Wars and then read Star Wars books, or maybe in the case of your favorite TV show, like mine, pick up a book, play a game, do other things involving that book, that property, that IP movie that you love. How far does that go? How invested in other media does your reading become? Video games. When I was playing Gears of War, I did pick up books on Gears of War and read some of the books, and they were actually surprisingly good. I've done it for other properties, other video games that I loved, and read books that were related to them. Is that a step too far? Would you read a book based on a video game? Would you play a video game based on a book? On occasion, I read poetry. Not every day, but on occasion I do. One of my favorite poems is The Lady of Shalott, which is based itself on the Arthurian legend. But it inspired artwork based off of Alfred Tennyson's poem. For example, John William Waterhouse did a painting based off the poem, and it's actually one of my favorite pieces of art. And I read a lot of Poe, and I love Poe's poetry. My favorite being Alone is my favorite poem of all time. And I will, look up artwork that reminds me of that. Would that be a step too far? Would that be something you would do? Would you, if you read poetry, would you connect it to something else? Was poetry something that you could use in multimedia? Is it something you could do? Or, for example, nonfiction. One of my favorite nonfiction stories is the story of the chase for the Bismarck, the famous German battleship. Well, it's not a stretch too far to watch a movie based on that. It feels kind of normal for me. But I've also will listen to. So there are two songs that are actually based off those true events that I know of. At least there are probably more. But Sabaton did one, and there's one going way back, Johnny Horton, Sink the Bismarck. And I listen to both those songs. I'm a fan of both those songs because of my love of the story, which I read about. And also, I engage in board gaming around that subject. So that's multimedia. I read about it. I will listen to the music. I watch the movie. I play the board games. So is that a step too far? Is that something you would do? Would you engage in a board game based on a book? There's board games that I own based on Dune, based on Starship Troopers, based on The Keep, and others. I have a Firefly board game. Is that multimedia? Is that too much of a stretch? Was that something that you would engage in? Now, I brought this subject up because a book appeared on my radar. And I want to give you a little background, so bear with me because I do this on occasion where I ramble. So where I live is I'm right on one of the Great Lakes. I am a few mere miles away from Lake Ontario. and so close that me and my friends would get on our bikes, jump on Lake Avenue, and ride straight through and hit the beach. We could do that and then and hang out at the beach all day and ride home at night. And Lake Ontario has a great amount of books written about it. There's a great amount of history around the Revolutionary War and French Indian War and things that happened on that. So if you're interested, there's a lot. And in fact, all the Great Lakes have an incredible amount of story. And funny, though, I mentioned Lake Avenue. So if I don't know if you know, but there's a band called Foreigner that was big in the 80s, and the lead singer, Lou Gramm, is from here, and so is the entire band from Ice Nine Kills, other than the lead singer. Anyway, he's from Rochester, and he wrote a song called Rev on the Red Line, where he mentions Lake Avenue, and it's like literally 30 seconds from my house. Anyway, that song is about drag racing down Lake Avenue, and just a funny aside. But anyway, so like I said, I'm on the Great Lakes. I'm on Ontario. And one of the first news stories I ever remember in my life, I was about 7 years old. I was 7 years old. It was on November 10th, 1975, when they reported the story of the sinking of the Edmund Fitzgerald. A lot of people watching this will know that story. It's the first news story that I ever remember, and it had an effect on me. And anyway, this October, there's a new book coming out about the Edmund Fitzgerald, the sinking of the Edmund Fitzgerald. I think it's called The Gales of November, and I'm looking forward to it. I've already put it in as a pre-order. And I've read other books on that subject. And I don't know if you know, you probably do, there's a very, very famous song called The Sinking of the Edmund Fitzgerald by Gordon Lightfoot. And it is one of the most epic, most haunting songs ever written, bar none. And every time I hear it, it brings a tear to my eye. And not much can do that to me. Books, movies don't do that to me. But this song always kind of brings up some emotion to me. I have, a connection to it. So with this new book coming out, I was very excited because it's a newer version. I've read a bunch of the older versions, and this one should have new information in it. And I was very excited about that. And the song, The Edmund Fitzgerald, is in my playlist, and it came up, of course, after I ordered this book. So it made me start thinking about how books cross into other lanes and things that people do regarding books they love. So I was wondering, with books you love, is you just reading the books and you're done and that's all there is to it? Do you go into the movies or vice versa? Do you read books from the TV shows? Or are there other ways that you expand your love of books into other media, into other forms, to continue to expand your love of reading into other aspects, to make sure that your love of reading is crossing over into other aspects of your life? So your love of books isn't just, I read, I put it back on the shelf, and I moved on. What's next? Is there other things you do that expand your love of reading into other areas of your life? And that was my question. And that's what I wanted to address and talk about. So tell me about it. If you have something you do that makes your book love cross over into other aspects of your life, I want to hear about it. Let me know. Let's talk about it. Anyway, I hope you find this subject interesting. It was something that came into mind, and I wanted to talk about it. Because yes, as a reader, I do try to expand, as I've shown you, my reading love into other aspects, not just movies or going the other way with, tie-ins for movies and TV shows, but, video games and art and music. Do any of you have anything like that? And anything that I didn't think of to mention? Let me know. Thank you. So please subscribe. I would appreciate it if you would. And remember, the secret to Zen: read books, pet dogs, listen to metal, and I'll see you soon.